So just for the attendees, thank you for coming. And Mary's going to get started here in just a second. My name is Elizabeth, and I'm actually work at the Glen Ellen Library. I'm going to keep myself muted in the background, as I had mentioned to Mary, and I'll pop in if I see a question in the chat box. So please do write your questions or any comments, anything you want to share with us in the chat box. I will be keeping my eye on it, and Mary will answer any questions you have. So please be as interactive and as participatory as you wish, because that does make a program better. And so, Mary, I'm going to mute myself at this point and just let you go as you wish. Okay?
Okay. Hello, Jerry and Laura and anybody else who happens to pop in. I'm Mary Wu, and I'm also going to encourage you to put information in the chat box. This is predominantly focused on LinkedIn for business owners, but if you have other questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and we will cover those as we have some breaks in. I am, as I said, Mary Wu. I was in administration at the University of Illinois for a very long time. Then we moved up to the Chicago metro area. I was a virtual assistant, and then I moved into doing social media consulting. I do programs at libraries and at community colleges, but I also help people one-on-one to teach them how to better use their social media platforms for their business. And a lot of businesses tend to shy away from LinkedIn. It's a really good place for business, so I kind of help people with that a little bit. And I have also found that often when I'm teaching, I learn things from questions that are asked, so feel free to ask questions. I can put this in the chat, or this, you will have a recording. You can come back in this. There are slides from this course on my website. There are also a couple of articles that kind of dive into some of the things that we'll talk about in here, so that if you're a reader instead of a watcher, you can get some information from that. I invite you to look at that anytime. It's on my website. Today, we're predominantly going to look at what's above the fold on LinkedIn. And if you either have read an old kind of newspaper that was folded, or if you've seen the musical Newsies, you know that newspapers sell by what people can see immediately on the front page right there at the top. And LinkedIn is the same way. You can sell yourself on LinkedIn, but you have to remember that what is right at the top that most people can see is what's going to convince people whether they want to dig a little deeper. And unfortunately, the way it works in the world is you only get one chance to make a first impression. Sometimes you can double back and correct things, but that first impression really counts for people, especially in business if somebody's just zipping by looking for somebody that provides a specific type of service. We'll also talk later about some maintenance things that you can do on LinkedIn, but we'll get to those later and see how the time goes. First, we're going to check above the box. Why do I like LinkedIn? It's all business. You don't get a whole lot of, well, let's say it's 2020 and you don't get a whole lot of political talk there. You don't get a whole lot of talk about what's going on in the world. You just get to talk about your business and what you do and what you need and what your clients need. Facebook is huge. Many people are on there, and organic reach, especially for business pages, is down. However, with the number of people on LinkedIn, and then when you compare that to the number of people that are actually posting, the organic reach is very powerful on LinkedIn. I know very few people that are doing ads on LinkedIn, and many of them are getting good results on LinkedIn because what you say gets in front of people, as opposed to on Facebook, where for businesses, it's kind of a pay-to-play sort of a thing. And everybody, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, everywhere, loves videos right now. But we also love videos that are typically less than 3 minutes long. We lose our interest after that unless it's something really compelling. I do know people that have regular video shows that are an hour long. They've got fabulous content so they can hold people for an hour. But for a lot of things, people just want a couple of seconds, what they could watch during a commercial break as they're watching some show on TV. Other advantages of LinkedIn is you can connect with your influencers. If there's somebody in your industry that you really love and follow and want to connect with, you might not be able to do that so well on Facebook, but a lot of times people will connect with people on LinkedIn that they wouldn't friend on Facebook. They'd rather have a business connection than a friend connection. LinkedIn, especially if you're using it to post articles or bits of articles from your blog or your website, it's a really good way to boost your SEO by driving traffic back to your website. Facebook doesn't like to drive people off Facebook. LinkedIn will allow some of that. And you can also increase your connections. And from the time that I was first looking for a job, I learned that when you're looking for something, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And one of the things that's great about LinkedIn is people that you knew 20 years ago, you could still be connected with them. And you might find out that they're at that place that you really want to get an inside scoop on. And so that's a great advantage. Other advantages of LinkedIn is if you're a small business owner and your business is your brand, which it is for many coaches and many consultants, you can really use LinkedIn to build that. You could use it to increase the visibility of your products and your services. And if you are regularly posting good articles, it shows your thought leadership. Some other advantages is you can build connections with prospective clients. Yes, we like our influencers and we like our connections, but we also like people that might give us money someday. They're kind of a useful thing. You can develop strategic partnerships. Typically, when I think of strategic partnerships, I'll think of that Leads Club, the trifecta. If you get the realtor, the mortgage broker, and the insurance agent, and they can pass leads back and forth. And depending on what type of a business you're in, you would have different types of strategic partners, but you can seek them out on LinkedIn and shout each other out on LinkedIn. And you can also participate in groups. But one of the things I'm going to point out with groups on LinkedIn, there was a state of flux. When LinkedIn owned LinkedIn, they really put a lot of power behind groups. When Microsoft first bought LinkedIn, they sort of neglected giving any energy to the groups. When Facebook upped their communities, you've seen the ads about, Facebook groups. Then Microsoft owning LinkedIn started upping the communities. So depending on what groups you're looking at, they could look like they're kind of dead because they're from the before time. So you have to really seek out and have a strategic plan in mind to reach out to those groups. But now we'll just hit right above the fold, images, headlines, summary, and media. And you'll see some screenshots in here as we go along. This is a little old because he is now a first connection. He has a different banner, but I love this banner photo. It's very simple and it says something about him. He lives in London, but also you don't have a lot of information on the banner photo. All of the social media platforms tend to change their sizing for images, change the way they do their images, change the placement of information. And a lot of times you could have over here, you might have a website, and then all of a sudden they'll move a picture. And you've
Mary,
lost
I'm going to
information
interrupt you here for just a moment.
Sure.
We are seeing you. We are not seeing
You are
screen.
not seeing the screen share at all?
No. So you have to stop your screen share, and then when you restart it again, choose what you want us to see. I think that might help.
Okay, now most of what I've said wasn't going off the screen, so it wasn't that useful. So let's try
it didn't seem to, which is why I didn't interrupt before, but now it was apparent that.
How's this? Are we seeing the screen now? It looks like we might be.
I'm seeing, yes, add an eye-catching banner photo, and then someone's screen.
So this
Okay.
is where images comes in. Matt Navarro is great. I love him. He's got London behind him. And social media platforms change how they do these things. At one point in time, this picture was on the left, either on the phone or the desktop, and then in the middle on the desktop or the phone. So depending on what you might have on your banner, you might lose real estate from your banner as you do certain things. So you either want to have something very plain so that you won't lose any real estate, or you want to make sure you regularly go in and check that they haven't changed placements and you haven't lost information. So I like this banner photo to be very up to date, and I also like the profile photo to be very up to date, and we're going to talk about that in a second. This is my friend Barb, and I use her. I've been using her for a few years when I talk about profile photos, and she knows I do this and has given me permission. Barb is a good friend of mine, and when I first met her, she had this gorgeous long red hair. She decided she was going to be a generous person and give money to St. Baldrick's by getting herself bald, and now she's got kind of this silver angle to her hair, which is all fine, and all the way along she kept up her profile photos. But if your profile photo looks like 5 years ago, so if Barb's profile photo looked like somebody with long red hair and you were trying to meet her, if they were coming in for a job interview or if you were meeting them for coffee, you wouldn't recognize her if she did not keep her photo up to date. So we want to keep our photos up to date. We want them to be professionally done, and you don't want the photos that have cropped out somebody. You might have looked great when you went to that wedding, and you're right next to your spouse there, and the arm is around someone. It always kind of looks like somebody was cropped out. So make sure you get yourself a good profile photo. Many photographers will have one-off days where they'll just kind of farm people through on headshots, and they'll do it for $75 or $100 or $200, give you 3 headshots that you can use in different places. That's worth the investment if you do it every few years. Next thing is the headline. This is my favorite. The headline is 220 characters. I'm going to go back to Matt and show you exactly what that is. Right here, it says Digital Media Consultant, Audience Development, Social Media Strategy. That's his headline. You can get up to 220 characters, and you want to think of it like a 10-second elevator pitch. You want to say who you are and who you're helping and how you make their life better. And if there's proof that you're credible, you could put that in there. So if you've got the right initials behind your name for the job you're doing, that's a great place to put them. You make sure you put that PhD or the MD or any initials that are appropriate for your business. At one point in time, and this slide needs to be changed, at one point in time, if you did it on the desktop, you got 120 characters. If you did it on the phone, you got 220 characters. That changed in July. I all of a sudden went on and it was like, oh, everybody gets 220, which is very cool. And I never understood why it was different. I sometimes think the shorter one might be a little better. The other great thing about the headline is it shows up everywhere. If you post an article, if you post something, or if you write a long form article, which you can also do on LinkedIn, or if you just make a comment on somebody else's post, that headline will show up. So anybody who sees your name will also see who you are and what you do. Sometimes you'll only see the first 20 or 30 or 40 characters, so make sure you start well with a bang. And we're going to talk about the summary in a second. The summary is, after I do summary and media, I'll kind of show you on a screen from LinkedIn what those all are. The summary is the part that comes under your photos. It's the about section, and that's where you can put in as many words as you want. You want to make sure, again, the first 2 or 3 lines will appear above the fold, so you start good. And the other thing I always want you to do in your summary section, if you have a paid LinkedIn account, you can have people come in, and you can check a box that says anybody can contact me. You can give them my information. If you have a free account, you can't do that, but you can put your contact information in your summary. So if you want people to easily find you, pop that contact information in your summary. You want to speak directly to your target audience and tell them why they want to contact you. You want it to be short and sweet. They give you a lot of space for information, but like I said with the videos, sometimes we just lose interest in things. And then I like you to, if you're like, what do I write? Look at people in your area, especially maybe those people that are influencers in your area, and kind of see what they're doing. Never copy them. We have a librarian in the room. She'd probably get mad if we copy people, but you can emulate them. You can get ideas from what they're doing. Sometimes you look at something and you go, oh, and then all of a sudden you go off on a completely different track that was put on kind of using them as a mastermind thing. In the summary, some people wonder whether they should write in the first person or the third person. It's LinkedIn and everybody knows you're talking about yourself. So you can use the first person and it makes sense. But some people are much more comfortable just grammatically writing in the third person. What I suggest, you look down your whole timeline and stay in one lane or the other. I've seen people where they've gone through and updated LinkedIn, and at one point in time, I'd be saying, Mary has done this. And then at another place, I'm saying, I have done this. And that gets confusing and is inconsistent. So I'd rather have you pick one lane or another than spend a whole lot of time on first or third person. It's the same process that you're going through with your headline, though. What do you want to say to the people that you want to get to read further down in your LinkedIn, or to hit that contact button, or to hit that connect button? And then media, it's all my favorite parts. I always say this is my favorite part. They're all my favorite parts. Media is kind of cool. You could put in videos, you can put in PDFs, you can put in documents, you can put in slideshows, you can put in YouTube videos. LinkedIn likes YouTube videos better than Vivo videos. I don't know why. That's way above my pay grade, but if you have a video that you'd like to put in there, I suggest loading it up to YouTube and then sharing the link in from YouTube. And they may or may not change what formats are accepted. There's a link within LinkedIn that shows you what they're accepting. You can have, if you're a speaker, you can have a speaker sheet. If you're a presenter, you can have a video of your presentation. If you have a podcast, you could pop that in there. Any place that you want to send people is what you want to do there. We're going to take a quick pause for questions, and I am going to stop the share and have a quick drink of water, and then we'll go to screen share. Are there any questions?
I'm not currently seeing any questions. If anyone has one, go ahead and type it in while Mary has a little sip of water. Otherwise, we can go ahead and move on to the next.
Yeah, I can only talk for so long without taking, it's sweet corn season and tomato season. It's also ragweed season. So, like, oh
dear.
I was so miserable earlier this week.
We do have a question.
Max file size.
Yep,
okay.
for the media.
File size may not exceed 300 meg. And the maximum resolution for images is 120 megapixels. And this will be recorded, and you'll be able to come back and look at this later. So yeah, this is not where you necessarily drop your entire portfolio, but you can drop a link to your entire portfolio. So if you want to if you can't get the entire file in, you can pop a link to where the file might be. And there's lots of great places to put files like Dropbox or Google Drive. Okay, we don't have any other questions at the moment?
No, I don't see anything.
Okay, we have got a bit of time left. I'm going to talk about what we should do. Oh, I'm just going to do a real quick share my screen so I can show you the parts that I was talking about. Actually, I'll go back to Matt Navarra. Just because it's easier to see what it looks like when I show not me. When I see I see it from my point of view as the user. If I show somebody else, then I see it from theirs. So this is a cool thing that they put on. You can press this button and hear how to pronounce a name, which won't matter with somebody like Matt Navarro, but might matter with somebody with a more complex name. Banner photo, profile photo. One of the things that I love that LinkedIn has is shows you who the mutual connections you have with somebody are. This is the summary section, which I was talking about. And I like to have, this is where I like to make sure I've got contact information somewhere if people might be looking to connect with you. And even though if you have a professional LinkedIn account, people can reach out to you, sometimes they have trouble figuring out where those buttons are. So still having the contact information here is good. In Matt's featured section, he's got his free Facebook group and a way to request access. And yes, I'm in that, which is how I keep up with 90% of the changes that are being made, because he's got a very active group that updates each other on what's going on in the world. So I'm going to stop and go back to the slides. Okay, now you don't have to spend forever on LinkedIn every day in order to be useful, but there are some things that I like to do every day. See what the notifications are, see any messages you have, kind of look at your timeline and see what your colleagues are saying, and check your connection requests. When somebody requests to connect with me, I have a plan in my own mind, and I think everybody kind of should. Some people, they're called LinkedIn open networkers. They will connect with anybody, and that's fine. I connect with people that I feel I might have a reason to connect with. So I'm not necessarily going to connect with somebody from a foreign country that does website development that has zero common connections with me. I'm more likely to connect with people that have a few common connections and I feel like would be a good pairing for me. I'm not going to just connect with anybody who asks me. The most amusing one I've gotten in the past month is somebody reached out to me and said, I'd like to connect with you. We have mutual connections. He didn't realize that this was LinkedIn. And if it's LinkedIn, I could tell right away, we don't know any of the same people. Why are you lying to me? So I would highly advise against lying to people, especially if they can see right on that same screen that it's a lie. There are some things I want you to do every week. Post something, an article. You can do a long form article, or you can do a short post like sharing a bit of information or sharing an article from an industry newsletter. You can ask people questions. Hey, what's your biggest struggle in your business this week? You can put in promotions, but do more than just promotions. If you have groups, visit your groups and see what's going on in there. And if there's some good connections you could be making or some information that might be useful, sometimes there might be groups that have networking events and you can follow those. Check who's viewed your profile. Sometimes somebody will view your profile but not reach out to connect to you, but you might want to double back and find out, why are they looking at me if you have that access? If you have the free account, you can only see a few of the views and not all of them. And I always like to suggest every week or two, reach out to one or two former colleagues. Just, hi, how are you doing? What's going on with you? Especially if these are people that might be some of those really good partnership type of situations, if they have the same ideal client that you do. About once a month, there's a way you can save all of your contacts to a spreadsheet. I like to do that. I like to get recommendations on LinkedIn, but it's also useful to write them. I like suggesting that people write one recommendation a month, but something I've started doing lately, which seems to be working really well, is when it's somebody's birthday, instead of getting a happy birthday that's lost in with 300 other Facebook notes, I will write them a recommendation on either Facebook or on LinkedIn. And that gets remembered a little bit more than one of 300 happy birthdays. Monthly, you should kind of think about what you want to be posting for next month, what kind of information you want to share, and think about who you might have met in the past month. If you've met people networking, if you've met people through business relationships, think about who they are and reach out to connect with them. I'm going to go back into a really quick screen share and show you something, let's see, that I like to do. Boom, boom. So I'm trying to think of somebody that I might not know. Wow. Okay, that's, of course, hold on. I can't think of anybody right now who I'm not connected to. I'm not connected to Renee Brown. I just follow her. Let's say I wanted to connect with her. If you reach out to connect with somebody, I'm not going to connect with her. I don't think she'd want to connect with me. What will happen next is a box will pop up that says add a note. There's two really good reasons to do this. One is because it gives the person an idea of how you've met them. So if you've met them through somebody else, if you've met them, if any of you wanted to reach out to me today and say, hey, Mary, I was in your library program, that would, tick my mind and go, oh, that's where I know them from. So you write them a note. The other thing this does is if you're having a meeting with somebody later and you're like, how did I meet them? You can go through your messages and go, oh, that's right. We were both at the same chamber luncheon. So you can remember how this person came to be into your universe. And while we're in here, I'm going to show you something that you can do. You can start a post on LinkedIn, and this is short form. You have a lot of characters, but not forever. The other thing you could do on LinkedIn is write an article. And this is a long form article. You could put images in there. There's good reasons for both. When Microsoft bought LinkedIn, they changed the way they do the analytics. Before that, though, one of the things that we noticed was people who were doing posts were getting those posts in front of their first and second connections more. People that were doing articles were getting those articles in front of their second and third connections. So the articles had a different reach than the post. So having a plan where you're doing some of each will reach out to different people, which is always a good thing. The more people you can reach, the better. And I'm going to take a quick, drink, and then I will go back to sharing. A quick sip of water. Oh, and actually I'll do a pause after this slide and then we'll go back. Things I want you to do every year: look at your profile photo, see if there's any connections that you might need to add or remove, and look at your skills. Have you added skills? Is there something new that you've added, even if you're doing the same job, that might be of use for your clients to know? And also review the groups that you're in. Sometimes you need to get rid of groups because they're a little bit too noisy. So we're going to take a quick water pause and see if there are any other questions at the moment. And most of the rest of this that I'm going to do is going to be just going into the LinkedIn view and looking at things from that perspective. Any questions?
I'm not seeing anything here. I think you can see the chat box as well, but I'm not seeing anything typed in there.
Yeah, I can't see any chats, but I'm also trying to encourage people, if they have questions, they can pop them in. And if you're watching this later and you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. You now know where my LinkedIn is, and just say, hey, Mary, I did this and I don't understand something. Okay. There's a few really cool things we can do on LinkedIn that I'm going to show you. Let's see. There is a URL on LinkedIn. Mine says linkedin.com/IN Mary Wu VA. You can do that. I like desktops. You can do a lot more on a desktop for LinkedIn than you can on a phone. There's things you can do on a phone too, but desktops are good for that heavy duty editing. Up here in this corner, you can edit your URL. You click the edit your URL, and right here is where your custom URL is. Most people have linkedin.com, IN, and then there's a name and a bunch of numbers. But you can edit that down to be simpler to tell people, and it also just looks a little bit tidier. So I like to have that in there. That's one of the things I like to do. And another thing that's really useful on LinkedIn to do is to tag people in posts. I'm going to show you something I posted today just because it's off the top of my head a good way to show you an example of this. So let's see. A friend of mine has a podcast, and she just hit her 50th podcast. So I'm showing this, and I tagged her name. So now not only do the people that know me see this, but also all the people that show her see this. And this is an example. I'm just hovering over this name right here, and over here I can see that headline that she's got. Hers is very short, so it's very concise. I like that. And it shows our shared connection. Tagging is really useful on LinkedIn, especially if you're doing it strategically and tagging the right people for the right reasons. If you start tagging everybody that you know in every post you do, you're going to drive people crazy, and they'll go hiding in weeds or something. The other thing, though, is if you write an article, you can't tag a person in the article. However, after you've published that long form article that I showed you where you could do the images and stuff, you can make comments and then tag appropriate people in the comments. So that's just another tip. And from here, I can't see if there's chat, but it doesn't look like there is anything. Does anybody want to think about, what you might write for your 120 character headline? And I do see something. Oh, chat. How do you take, it's the same as Facebook, Laura. It's, hold on. Give me a second. So, she won't be mad at me. Okay, I'm actually going to do a post. I'd like to, happy birthday to my friend, Stacy Montgomery. And so when you hit the @ sign and you start the name, the names will pop up. And you can either have it be anyone or connections only, and I will do anyone, and I'm not going to send this to Twitter. So now you see how it highlights that name. Also on LinkedIn, they are starting to use hashtags. If you are familiar with Instagram and their way of using like 30 hashtags, I would not advise that on LinkedIn. I would say keep hashtags to 3 to 5 hashtags and no more than that. People on LinkedIn kind of aren't used to seeing hashtags, so it sort of freaks them out a little bit when they see too many of them. Any other questions? I don't like to be too short, but we're going to go down a profile a little bit. We'll pick on Stacy since we talked about her and show you just some of the other things that are here. This is the About section, which we talked about, and the features. Stacy's put on a YouTube video and a workshop that she did. Experience is right through here. With experiences on LinkedIn, people are not reading LinkedIn as they would a resume, and they're not looking for gaps. So if there are jobs that you've had that you just don't think are useful for your people to know now, you do not have to put them there. I know one coach, she has a great coaching business for a while. It was a little bit, and she spent a few years working at Target. That's not going to show up on her LinkedIn, and that's okay. You can put in education recommendations. I always suggest giving and asking for some. And then you come down here, interests. If you've published anything, you can actually put those in accomplishments, the publications. So there's a lot more you can dig into in the depths of LinkedIn, but most of that stuff is very human, person specific, and it's harder to go through that in a grand overview. But as long as we're in here, I'm going to show you one thing that you can do that I love people to do. Okay. The blue button up here is kind of how you get to your home base. And up here is these little icons. If you click on My Network, you can go to your connections. If you click on your connections, it will bring up an option to, over here on the right, manage synced and imported contacts. From there, you can download all of your contacts that are on LinkedIn. I do not think LinkedIn is going to go away forever and ever, but saving that every couple of months is not a bad idea, so that if something were to happen, you would still have access to everybody's email addresses. So that's just a tip that I like people to do. Okay? Any other questions right now? And I will give you a minute to, oh, we only have Laura here. We lost the other person. Any other questions, Laura? Okay, Elizabeth, do you have any questions, even though you're co-host? Is there anything you feel like you'd really want to ask me while you're here?
You know, the one thing that I had been told, and this was probably a year and a half ago or so, is that when you're on LinkedIn, there's kind of this magic number of 500, and you want to try and really reach this magic number of 500 connections. Can you talk about that at all?
Okay, here's the deal. If I am looking at somebody on LinkedIn, it will tell me how many connections they have until you get to 500. Then it's 500 plus connections. So if I have 501 connections, you see that I have 500 plus connections. If I have 1,000 connections, you see that I have 500 plus connections. And it kind of lets somebody know, okay, they're not active on LinkedIn, they're not involved with LinkedIn if you don't have that many connections. Does that make sense? Because the 500 is when you don't get to see what happens after that. But before that, you get to see every single, how come you only got 5 connections? And a lot of times that will get me from connecting with somebody. If they've only got, 10 connections, I'm like, really? Really?
So if you are trying to work yourself up to that magic 500 number, what is the best way to build your connection numbers without, like you said earlier, lying to people or being fake or false?
And a lot of that depends on who your universe is. I actually will do free talks like this for high school and college kids, and I'm telling them, connect with the TAs, connect with the professors, connect with the other students in your classes. It'd be the same thing for LinkedIn. Connect with the people you work with now, connect with the people that you used to work with. You were mentioning before that you have workshops with people from other libraries, networking with them. Connect with all the people from the other libraries that you know. Just reaching out to people, connect with me, connect with all the people that have come in and done presentations at the library and your outreach programs. Find out who they know to have other people come in to do outreach. So just think about the people you know, think about the people that you meet. And sometimes LinkedIn will like say, hey, you might know. And when they show you those people you might know, people you might want to connect with, think, is that somebody that might be a useful connection for me? Or I might be a useful connection for them. It should kind of be a two-way street. I like that guy whose profile I showed earlier, Matt Navarra. He is a much more useful connection for me than I am for him. There are other people, I am a much more useful connection for them than they are for me. And that's just kind of the way it works in the world. Sometimes you connect with people because they need you, and sometimes it's because you need them, and hopefully it's roughly about even.
Sure, that makes total sense. Because I mean, that's the way it is. Laura has
Okay.
something to say.
Nobody knows if you don't select them. It won't reflect negatively on your boss. There are just some people who you just look at and you know that this is not somebody that they need to be connecting with. Yeah, because some people just like are noise. Like the guy that reached out to me and said, hey, we have mutual connections. And I said, no, we don't. But they don't see who approves or disapproves you, unless they actually are keeping a spreadsheet of who they've tried to connect with and then go back. And sometimes people just assume that somebody who they're trying to connect with who hasn't responded to them is not active on LinkedIn. So
if you're going to be active on LinkedIn, and this is a question, if you're going to be active on LinkedIn, you should stay current and up to date on LinkedIn. Because how damaging is it to have an out-of-date LinkedIn profile?
It all depends on what you're looking for. You can kind of use LinkedIn as a standalone resume or kind of even like a website, just something that talks about you. But if you haven't posted, if you haven't connected with anybody, if you have no activity, people will be like, are they still alive? They haven't done any activity at all in months. And sometimes it's just, if you know how to look, I can just go through and see if somebody's posted a comment on an article. I'm like, okay, they're still alive. Some people I know never post. They just don't, because LinkedIn is not their platform, but they still pop in every week or two and see what's going on.
Is it still important to build up that skills portion? Does that even still exist on LinkedIn?
The skills and endorsements still exist. And people can click a button to endorse you for something. And everybody knows people can just click a button and endorse you for something. What's more important is the recommendations. So if Laura were to connect with you on LinkedIn and say she does fabulous programs at the Glen Ellen Library, that would be a recommendation that had words and a person and that person's photo attached to them. So that would have a lot more meat than two people clicked a button that said that you're good at PowerPoint.
I don't think I have any other questions. Laura, anything else? And again, this is being recorded and we do put it up. So Mary, as I had said to you earlier, we put the recording up on our social media and on our website. So we do tend to get a fair number of people who come and watch the program at their convenience when the timing works better for them.
Well, yeah, this is like right around for some people dinner time or walking the dog time, or, you know, people
Putting the kids to bed, absolutely.
They're popping their popcorn so they can go
Right.
watch TV at 8 o'clock.
Right, right. So we do tend to get fairly high numbers for people who watch the program afterwards. So if there's anything else, do you have a slide that gives your contact information?
Amazingly enough, I do not. But you can find me on LinkedIn. I should, because of this particular type of a program, I don't necessarily have a slide that gives my contact information, but I can give them a slide that tells them something that I like. If you like this presentation, I have a free Facebook group that you can find me at. You can tell a friend about it, or you can tell other groups or libraries that I'm willing to come in and talk to them about LinkedIn. And I am at www.marywooVA.com.
Okay, and that's, so on your slides we can see Mary Woo, but it's Mary Woo, V for Victor, A for Apple. Is that correct?
Correct, because I was a virtual assistant back in the day.
Do you see Laura's question?
Yes, I see Laura. I'm going to put that in here in the chat. And then Laura, I'll put my email address in here. So can Laura see the, yeah, Laura can see the thing that goes to all panelists.
Yeah, Laura can see. No, is yours to all panelists? Then no, Laura can't see that. You have to change it to say all panelists and attendees.
There, I'm going to change that and just, I don't have the webinar feature because that's more for, that's a lot more money. So I just have the pro version of Zoom.
Yeah, that's true. We at the library, we do the webinar feature to try and protect privacy and to make sure nobody can Zoom bomb us.
Oh, thank you. I have never been Zoom bombed, thank goodness, but you know, I know that it does happen. And you know, at the library, you also do a lot more programs than I do. I'll do 4 a month, and those are usually the same group of people, and it's very interactive, whereas this is more of a webinar feature. Okay, anything else anybody here need?
I think we're good, unless Lori has something to type in real quick. I think we're good, and I want to thank you, Mary, very much. I know LinkedIn can sometimes be intimidating for people, so I think it's really nice when we can have someone who makes it simpler, and I think you did that. So I want to thank you very much.
Yeah, I don't want people to be scared of LinkedIn. I want people to be on LinkedIn. And if anybody happens to have seen this and then decides to connect with me on LinkedIn, say something like, Mary, I saw your program at the Glen Ellen Library, and that's why I'm connecting with you. Instead of just a random connect request that I go, who are you?
Absolutely, that sounds good. Well, thank you again so very, very much. And you have a wonderful evening. And Laura, thank you as well.
Bye, Laura.
And Mary, I'll be in touch.
Okay, I will talk to you later. And thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you again.
Thank you. You have a good evening.